What's going on, everybody? I'm back with another video. This video is going to be looking at the Champions League match between English Premier League side Liverpool and then the Serie A side Inter Milan. Now, before we get into the tactics behind the match and how Liverpool ended up winning in the two-legged series but losing the match at home, got some really exciting news. This video is being brought to you by OneFootball. It's a great app. I use it to get updates on all the games, live scores when I can't physically be watching the games, and all the latest news. And just to the right of the screen here, that's just me scrolling through the app on my phone. It's great. It's got all the latest updates on matches, scores, news, anything you can think of, just simply in one app. And it's super great whether you're into fantasy or just a supporter of a team. I highly recommend it to everybody, and you can thank them for the videos. Then, as always, check out both my books. They're in the links in the description below, as well as the OneFootball link. And also be sure to check out Keyframe. And that's how I'm making this video, and there's a link to that in the description as well. Now let's get right into the tactics behind the match. So with Inter being down 2-0 coming into this leg, they had to take more chances. They had to press higher in more of a high block, and Liverpool then would try and play out of this. Now, Inter's goal did come from a transition from winning the ball in Liverpool's third, and then a great finish from Lautaro Martinez. So the ideal pressing sequence for Inter Milan would see them press the ball into one of the central defenders and then press from in to out and force the central defender against the line and into a condensed area. So what we see with Inter's press in a 5-3-2, they have two players to essentially press a four-man diamond between Liverpool's goalkeeper, two central defenders, and Fabinho as the single pivot. Now, Inter's midfield just behind them was very man-oriented in their high block towards the Liverpool midfield as well. So what would happen is progression would often be able to occur through the central defenders, just outside in the wide area in the outside of the half space, but it was a matter of whether Inter could get access to this player before he was able to release a third line pass to then adequately press him into the wide area. Man-oriented midfield and the numerical equality that Inter used to press with when they were defending in their last line of defense against the Liverpool front three made it hard for Liverpool to progress out from the back cleanly, which then made it harder for them to transition into the midfield third as well. And we also see situations where Andy Robertson would stay deeper to attract the wing backs of Inter and then create this space further forward, so when the ball was released to the central defender, a third line pass could be found. And here is just before the goal was scored. We have the build-up from Liverpool in their first third of the field, and even Thiago comes deeper to try and solidify ball circulation and control the build-up a little bit more. Inter's midfield three, after the press is initiated and going into the wide area, Inter's midfield shift over to then get ball side of Liverpool's midfielders, and with pressure coming from the inside corridors, pressing Matip to the sideline, this makes it very hard for him to find a forward pass and work in such a small space. Then they have players in the middle corridors to then adequately transition and create dangerous chances. So when the ball is forced to be played in the wide area, trying to find this third line pass easily can be intercepted, especially with man orientation at the back. And this is what happened. At the end of it, Lautaro Martinez was found and he was able to score the goal. Now moving into the midfield third, for Liverpool, they went with their usual build-up structure, which saw Trent Alexander-Arnold typically playing in the right half space as an inverted outside defender and more of a deep-lying playmaker. Also, Thiago would frequently drop deeper alongside Fabinho, opposite Trent Alexander-Arnold, giving them two very good passers of the ball in deeper areas in their second line of build-up. So by having these two players in the squad at the same time, they complement each other really well because of their qualities in possession and what they do for the team going forward. Especially moving into the midfield third, they can find third line passes against the 5-3-2 of Inter, and with Diogo Jota, Mane, and Salah all playing in the same side, it does create a lot of space for players like Diogo Jota, who are so good at finding the positions off the shoulder of the midfielders of Inter and finding superiority between the lines. Now, after Inter went down to 10 men after a red card occurred, Liverpool were able to get control over possession a little bit more, and Inter had to then focus on remaining defensively solid while trying to sneak one off a counterattack or a set piece. Jordan Henderson would then enter the game at this point, giving them a more defensive player profile. So when they were in possession, they had Jordan Henderson to then add to the counter pressure and to have a player dropping alongside Fabinho and offering a little bit more security in transitions other than having Trent Alexander-Arnold there. But here Inter played in a 5-3-1 after the red card occurred, which made it much harder for them to press and isolate the ball when Liverpool were in possession. But they still went with their man orientation at the back, often having defenders jump into the space between the lines to then cover the false nine and fluidity of the Liverpool front three. Then their single forward would then primarily be in for transitions, trying to press on the blind side of central midfielders of Liverpool and isolating possession as best as possible. But the main thing was keeping compactness, not allowing dangerous space to be opened up from Liverpool's possession, and then from here they could then use this as a foundation to transition through to try and exploit the space in Liverpool's offensive structure. Now, when Inter were in possession of the ball, they had some very interesting build-up tactics and fluidity from their initial line of build-up, which then matched up against the Liverpool press really well because of Liverpool's pressing fluidity and their positional fluidity they have not only in possession but also defensively as well. So the first key aspect is we see what appears to be a double pivot, but it's actually formed from a jumping central defender in possession of the ball, coming from a deeper area, manipulating Mo Salah's cover shadow and the way he presses. Then a number 8 or box-to-box midfielder from Inter Milan actually drops into the wide area to then create what looks to be a back three, but created from a positional interchange between two players, affecting Mo Salah's cover shadow and able to then progress the ball around or through Liverpool's press. And now we see the 4-3-3, often used by Liverpool, with Curtis Jones and then Thiago in front of Fabinho being attracted to what looks like a double pivot, but Inter shape being manipulated to then create better avenues to progress against the Liverpool press. Now in the mid block, we still see Liverpool going with their 4-3-3, but easily able to then go into a 4-5-1 if they wanted to create more control. And we still see the same build-up pattern with the box-to-box midfielder dropping between central defenders, now giving Inter the ability to occupy the wide area with dual width and temporarily vacating the space between the lines in the half space. What this does, it creates the opportunity to use this space dynamically, with one of the forwards from Inter dropping into the space between the lines and creating a third line passing option while trying to attract a defender from Liverpool's back line and creating space in behind. They often progress through very overloaded sides in the wide area to then try and control transitions and get Liverpool out of their defensive shape. Now the last picture we're going to look at is Inter in possession, progressing through an overloaded side. So we have our three defenders now with our right central defender just off our screen, and now we have our midfielders all occupying more natural midfielder positions. And now we see Alexis Sanchez, one of the two strikers for Inter, dropping in and creating a diamond through midfield with Lautaro Martinez threatening him behind as their height. And what Inter do so well is create third line passing option and use third man movements to then threaten and exploit the cover shadows used from Liverpool's pressing system. So we see here Curtis Jones jumping, Salah supporting the press in their three-man press, Diogo Jota filling in for Curtis Jones because of the jumping, which shows the positional fluidity Liverpool have when they press, and the 4-3-3. But now we can see that Brozovic, the holding midfielder of Inter, is in the cover shadow of Mo Salah or just on the opposite side of him, which then could be exploited via a third line pass and through a very condensed area. Having this overload in midfield, this four-man midfield, could give them an advantage when transitioning and allow them to then continue the attack going forward through a tight area. Now, that's where we're going to wrap up the analysis for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.